All right, hey everybody. Well, congratulations. This is now the beginning in North America. So a lot of things happening actually. So what I'm donning today is my new fashion accessory, which I'm betting you wish you had right now. This is the Israeli M15 with a particle filter on here, as you can see, the P100. This will cost you about $15 if you can buy them now. Last week you could. This, if you bought it about a month ago, would have been about $50. So there's that.
Okay, so not super comfortable to wear, but more comfortable probably than your N95 mask that you no longer have, maybe if you didn't buy them. But yeah, so I've worn the M95 on the plane before for a few hours, and that wasn't very comfortable. But so that's actually better. I'll be wearing that actually in public pretty soon, which will be interesting because now all of a sudden people are worried and people are wearing masks, and that's the new normal now. So going to be very interesting. So yeah, it's really hitting the fan here now, as you've seen in North America. I think no matter where you live now, you've seen the chaos, and it's just the tip of the iceberg here, unfortunately. So I hope many of you are now, as we've discussed, working from home, or kids are at home now, spring breakers, and figuring out what the plan is for them. As we've seen, all flights are canceled. So typically I talk about travel. Today won't be about travel so much because it's all canceled. I was supposed to fly out tomorrow to Germany. That won't be happening, obviously. And yeah, because all the flights are pretty much canceled. I could technically, I think, what are they? Oh no, all flights to Europe are canceled from the U.S., but I'm not sure from Canada. But yeah, I wouldn't want to go anyway at this point. It's funny because but yeah, no, this is moving quick, right? Quicker than I even thought it would. So we have a bunch of developments. We have, of course, the market. We have them pumping in stimulus into the market in hopes that that will fix things. I think it might be little bit premature to try to do that because we have a long ways to go still. We have President Trump gave his announcement today, said that he's not going to get tested, or he might get tested or something like that, that he's sure he doesn't have it. And he looks well, right? But he's an older gentleman. So don't touch my face. I always do that. Remind me, if you see me touching my face, tell me, don't touch your face. Okay. I need that. So he's an older gentleman. So he's definitely has some risk there, right? And our fearless leader, of course, has retreated to his bunker. I live in Canada, and Mr. Trudeau's wife was tested positive for the virus. So I hope she feels better soon and gets through it. So probably very safe from any infection. So I guess that's good because we wouldn't want him to get sick either. And yeah, so a lot of that going on. Europe's a mess, right? They're calling it the new epicenter of the virus. Well, it's a pandemic, so it's going to be like that everywhere in a matter of days. So there's nowhere to run, right? I think we have not really thought this out very well at all, which is really fully unprepared for the most part. So some things to think about. In my previous videos, we talked about at this stage what supplies you want, what you want to start doing. And so now let's kind of take that a step further. Let's talk about, your sheltering in place is basically what we're doing. From a first responder's point of view, the concept of shelter in place is really making sure that you can sit tight until help arrives, and you're just going to stay put because that's the safest option for you to do. And so that's what we're doing. We're sheltering in place. We've got our house or our apartment or our cabin or our tent or whatever it is that you've got, and we're just hunkering down. Okay. So you want to do a few things. You want to make sure that you've got some basic supplies. Now, you don't need to go full out. And in my previous video, I talked about some of the basics that you need. Need a little bit of food, you know. I would get things like flour. Nobody's talking about flour because I'm going to be baking some bread, right? I like bread. I never cook bread because I'm always too busy. But if I'm stuck at home for a couple weeks, I'm baking some bread. And what does it take to make bread? Not much, right? You're not burning through, boxes of canned goods to make bread. And bread tastes good, right? Everybody likes bread. You can dip it in some oil. You can put some jam on it. You can make sandwiches, whatever you want, right? It's a great filler. So I'll be making some bread. So flour, salt, right? Get some salt because we need salt. Get some noodles. Get maybe some rice. Get some pasta. Get some beans. Get some canned goods. All that stuff, right? Get some milk if you want, although that won't last very long. I would think about getting some of those cartons of milk or almond milk or soy or whatever you drink. For me, I'm actually having my coffee straight up these days, just to get away from all that other stuff. And that's another one, coffee. So I ordered on Amazon 6 containers of coffee because there's small containers because I like my coffee. So that's going on. Yeah, I got a couple beers as well. I'll probably have a beer every once in a while. And but for the food, you're hunkering down with that. You got a little bit. You don't have to go overboard, right? Because we're going to be able to go and buy food. The world's not ending, right? It will for some people, of course. For a small percentage of the world population, it's not going to be very nice. But for the rest of us, that are healthy, we just want to protect those that are not, really. And that's what it boils down to. So food, some medical supplies, right? Band-aids, stuff like that. And while I'm on that subject, what you want to think about is reduce your risk. So, we don't want to get hurt right now. We don't want to go to the hospital. So you want to make sure you've got your medicines, your prescriptions, you've got a medicine cabinet with some Band-Aids in it, some Tylenol, that sort of stuff. And I talked about that in a previous video. But also just don't take risks, right? Like don't stand on the chair to change the light. Get somebody to help you, steady you so you don't fall down. Just think about everything you're doing, right? We want to be really careful. When you're cutting the vegetables, be careful with that knife. Slow down. We got time now, right? If you've got a lot of people in your house, we want to try to, split off a little bit so we're not driving each other crazy. We can go out for walks still at this point. It's not like Wuhan yet. But you also want to kind of keep your distance from other people as well when you're out for a walk. When I go out for a walk where I am, not a lot of people, so I can keep my distance. If someone's on the sidewalk coming towards me, I move over and get onto the road a little bit. So I've got, at least 10 feet between me and them. So there's that. Now, the big thing to consider right now is that, okay, we're all at home. Everything's good. But let's say you have a family of 4, let's say 2 adults, 2 children. What if one of you gets sick, right? You don't know what it is. It's just maybe the flu, or maybe it's corona. Maybe it's COVID-19, right? We don't know. Just you starting to feel a little bit bad. What do you do, right? A lot of people have not really talked about this. So preparing for the family to get infected. And I think that's really something good to think about, because what room am I going to use for that quarantine room for that person who's sick? Well, that's a good thing to think about. Does it have a bathroom nearby? Because they're going to want to use a bathroom a lot, right? So there's that. How am I going to look after that person, right? So those are important things to think about. And with a little bit of duct tape, a little bit of plastic, you can kind of set up a second door chamber, kind of like not an airlock, but kind of a bit of an air trap that you can do. So you could kind of put food and supplies, towels, stuff like that in that area, and then you can close the door, and then the plastic flap or something or whatever you make, and then they can open the door to the room, and there it is. They can pull it inside the room, then they can close their door, right? So you've kind of trapped the air a little bit, and yeah, germs could get in, viruses could get into that area, but I think it's going to stop it from getting into the bigger area. And maybe you put a UV light in that little chamber, right, or something like that. But that's an idea you could do, right? Another alternative is if you've got a room with a deck, an outside deck, that's even better. So if you've got a room that has an outside deck and maybe it connects to another part of the house or stairs or something, so you can access that deck, you could put supplies and food there so the person can get the food. Well, how does the person know there's something there? You need some sort of communication system. So maybe it's a knock on the door. Maybe you text the person, maybe they have their phone, in which case you also need a charger, or maybe it's something else, right? Whatever you come up with is going to work, but you need to keep an eye on that person. So maybe you have a camera in the room, right? Maybe you buy one of these little Wise cameras. That's a brand that I use, or whatever. So you can actually monitor the person and make sure they're okay. And some of these cameras, you can actually talk through the camera and they can talk back to you, which is really cool. So for $30, that's a pretty good deal. I would highly recommend something like that. So figuring out what room are you going to use. Now, what if a second person gets sick, right? We don't know if it's the flu. We don't know if it's corona. What's going on? So do you have a second room for the second person, or are you going to stick them in with the first person with a room that's probably smells like puke, right? And poo. So not so nice, but do what you have to do. So there's that. So kind of plan for the whole family to get sick eventually, right? And then if you do that, your mind's going to be in the right place. You're not going to be surprised and panicked by it. You're ready for it. Hopefully it won't happen, but let's plan for that, okay? And then we can adapt, and we can sort that out. So so let's do that. And then if you need to put somebody in quarantine, they really need to be there for a while, right? So we're looking at weeks. So even once they're recovered, maybe they're going to be in there for another 2 weeks. So, that's something to think about as well. Other things to think about is that the world's getting kind of crazy, right? And so we need to start thinking about our situational awareness and what's going on around us. And so for me, I have cameras around the outside of my house. I have a monitor right there that I can see what's going on outside. When the motion sensor goes off, I can see that. I'm not in a big city, so I have that. And it's, I can see when a cat or a dog's running around my property, or when somebody's coming home, or for me, I really like it. So when FedEx or a courier comes up to my door, I can see what it is, right? And I never want to open the door when they're there right now. They can just leave it at the door and walk away, and then I'll come out and I'll wipe it down before I pull it in the house. A lot of times I'll just undo the packaging right there outside and throw it in the bin with my gloves on, and then I'll bring it inside. So there's that. So I have a bit of perimeter security there that I'm looking at. And then also I want to make sure my doors are locked at night, and during the day when people go out, are they locking the door behind them? Stuff like that. I mean, it's nothing too new, right? If you live in the city, you're probably pretty used to that. But when people are pushing and shoving to get toilet paper, we're one step in for any trouble. But we have to start thinking about security now a little bit, and not a lot of. I'm not putting a lot of energy into it. I'm using what I already have. If things get worse, if we start to see property being broken and things like that, then what I would probably do is buy some plywood and drills, and just drill the plywood over any of my windows that are at ground level. And so my front door has windows on each side of it. I would just plywood over those. And could they rip it off? Yeah, sure. But they're going to look at that and go, yeah, I'm not going to be bothered with that. So that's what I would probably do. And I'd probably secure my front door some way so that it was really difficult to open. And now my entrance would be probably somewhere else that was more difficult to get in the house. But, that's down the road. I don't see any civil unrest yet. But that's something to keep an eye on, I think, right? We want to make sure everybody's safe. So far, people have been holding it together pretty good. Other than the Costco toilet paper stuff, other than that, people have been pretty decent. Because I know everybody's freaked out. A lot of people are more freaked out than others. But I think that this is, a serious virus. People will have their families interrupted. It can be really pretty devastating for some people, but others are going to go through this without any issues. Most of you probably will go through this without a lot of issues. So we don't need to panic. I think that we need to take reasonable measures and do whatever we can, right? We want to avoid going to the hospital if we can. And that's really important, right? I mean, that's really our goal in this whole thing, is to not end up in the hospital. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Rob, what you really mean is we don't want to get sick, right? Nope, nope, that's not what I mean. What I mean is we don't want to go to the hospital because we could get sick and we could recover and we could be fine. But if it gets worse, then we end up going to the hospital, and the hospital's overrun, and they just can't treat us anyway. And we might get even more sick from other people's flu and stuff like that. Hospitals are going to be a bad place, right? They're going to be doing whatever they can for whoever they can, but they're going to have too many patients to look after. And if we're one of them, then it's a roll of the dice whether we're going to get looked after or not. And because they just won't be able to. It's not because they don't want to. It's that they just will be overrun, depending where you are, of course. So we want to delay having to go to the hospital. Where was I going with that? So, yeah, so we want to do that. Oh, where was I going with that? There was a really good point there somewhere. Darn it. Let's see. I think I've covered almost everything today anyway. There's a lot going on. It's, the news is just nonstop. It's easy for the people to get freaked out, but just stay calm, right? Try to do some exercise, drink a lot of water, take your vitamins. If you've got some, try not to watch the news all day because it's just nonstop. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? The economy's terrible. Just take a breath. Try not to freak out. You know, tomorrow's going to be here. So, yeah, I think that's it. If you've got any questions, let me know. But otherwise, stay safe out there, and I'll see you later.